They told me the papers were routine inheritance forms. My oldest brother pushed a pen toward me and said, "Just sign so we can finally move on." I almost signed them too until I noticed my own name where it wasn't supposed to be. Stick with me, because what I discovered that night changed everything about my family. 1 week after our mother's funeral, I sat quietly at the dining room table while my 3 older brothers discussed selling our childhood home like I wasn't even there. Grayson handled all the legal papers. Maddox talked about finances and debt. Ethan kept pretending they were only trying to help me through this difficult time. Together, they made me feel invisible. That wasn't new. For nearly 6 years, I stayed home caring for our sick mother while my brothers built careers and families in other states. I gave up college. I gave up relationships. At night, I worked bookkeeping jobs online just to help pay medical bills. But after Mom died, none of that seemed to matter. My brothers treated me like a temporary guest in the house I sacrificed my life to protect. They claimed the home needed to be sold because of serious debt problems. According to Grayson, we only needed to sign some routine inheritance paperwork before listing the property. At first, I believed them. Then I noticed something strange. One deed reference number didn't match the others. Just one number was different. I kept reading carefully, and suddenly my stomach dropped. Attached to that number was a survivorship ownership clause connected directly to my name. Not my brothers' names.
Mine.
The moment I looked up from the papers, Grayson quickly reached for the folder like he didn't want me reading anymore. That tiny reaction told me everything. For the first time, I realized my brothers weren't grieving our parents. They were hiding something. But I said nothing. Instead, I signed only part of the paperwork and pretended I noticed nothing wrong. That night, after everyone went downstairs celebrating, I secretly photographed every page before returning the folder exactly where I found it. Then I sat alone in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. The house sale was never the real plan. Something much bigger was buried inside those papers. And somehow, my brothers were desperate to stop me from finding the truth. Over the next few days, Ivy started noticing how carefully her brothers controlled every conversation about money. Whenever she walked into a room, voices immediately stopped. Whenever she asked simple questions, Ethan sighed impatiently and reminded her she was too emotional to understand legal matters. Maddox kept repeating the same painful sentence. Dad trusted the sons with business responsibilities for a reason. The words hurt more than Ivy wanted to admit because growing up, it had always been true. Their father proudly brought the boys into meetings and praised their ambition in front of everyone. He introduced them as the future of the Holloway family business. Meanwhile, Ivy slowly disappeared into the background. After their mother became sick, Ivy stayed home while her brothers moved away and built successful lives in different states. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, managed medications, attended doctor appointments, and answered every late-night emergency call alone. But during the funeral, relatives still praised the brothers for handling everything. Nobody mentioned Ivy. That old pain almost convinced her to forget about the strange deed issue completely. Maybe her brothers were right. Maybe she was imagining things because of grief. But one question continued haunting her. Why did Grayson panic so quickly over one document number? Late one night, while her brothers slept upstairs, Ivy quietly entered her father's old office searching for answers. Dust covered the shelves, and the room still smelled faintly like his coffee and aftershave. She carefully searched through filing cabinets until she found old accounting binders hidden behind tax folders. Inside them were copies of property tax records. And what she discovered made her hands shake. 2 years earlier, the ownership of the house had secretly changed. Her father added Ivy's name directly onto the deed, not as partial owner, as surviving co-owner, meaning after his death, the house legally became hers automatically. Her brothers knew the truth the entire time, and they still tried pressuring her into signing the property away. But the deeper Ivy searched, the worse everything became. Large withdrawals appeared in company accounts shortly before their father died. Loans existed that shouldn't exist at all. Even worse, several signatures on financial forms looked strange and inconsistent. Ivy stared at the papers in disbelief. The house wasn't being sold to settle debt. The debts themselves might not even be real. Suddenly, her fear became much heavier. Her brothers were not simply lying to her. They were hiding something dangerous. And for the first time in her life, Ivy realized she might not actually know her family at all. Instead of confronting her brothers immediately, Ivy made a decision that terrified her. She decided to pretend she knew nothing. The next morning, she walked downstairs looking tired and emotionally drained. She apologized for making things difficult and even thanked Grayson for handling the estate paperwork after their parents' deaths. The act worked perfectly. For the first time since the funeral, her brothers relaxed around her. Maddox stopped hiding financial conversations. Ethan spoke more openly. Even Grayson finally looked less suspicious whenever Ivy entered the room. And once they stopped seeing her as a threat, Ivy started hearing everything. One afternoon, she overheard Maddox saying they needed to rush the property sale before certain records were reviewed. Another night, Ethan complained that buyers kept asking questions about liens attached to the house. Then one evening, Ivy passed Grayson's office and heard him whispering on the phone about moving money before probate finishes. Each conversation made her stomach twist tighter. This was no longer about inheritance. Her brothers were hiding financial fraud connected to their father's construction company. But fear alone wasn't enough. Ivy needed proof. So every night after the house became quiet, she secretly searched through files while her brothers slept upstairs. She copied bank statements, property records, loan agreements, insurance forms, and business documents. The deeper she looked, the worse things became. Then she found something that nearly made her physically sick. Hidden inside a locked cabinet were loan documents signed after their father's health had seriously declined. Ivy stared at the signatures carefully. They were forged multiple times. Some loans totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars. Her hands started shaking as the truth finally became impossible to deny. Her brothers had not only betrayed her, they betrayed their dying father too. For several minutes, Ivy simply sat alone on the office floor trying not to cry. Memories kept rushing through her mind. Her father struggling to walk during his final months. Her brothers promising they would handle everything. The trust her parents placed in their sons. And all that time, they were secretly using his name to steal money. The realization broke something inside her. Still, Ivy said nothing. At dinner the next evening, she smiled weakly while Ethan joked that she had always been too sensitive for business stress. Maddox laughed. Even Grayson looked relieved seeing her quiet again. None of them realized the truth. Behind every nervous smile, Ivy was secretly building a case against all three of them. And with every fake conversation, every copied document, and every lie they told, she moved one step closer to destroying them. While searching through more old company files late one night, Ivy uncovered another piece of the story her brothers desperately tried to hide. A real estate developer named Conrad Voss had been trying to buy the Holloway property for years. Their father always refused. Again and again, he rejected every offer Conrad made, no matter how much money was involved. Ivy even remembered hearing arguments about it years earlier behind closed office doors. But according to the documents she found, something changed shortly before their father died. Grayson secretly reopened negotiations with Conrad behind everyone's back. The discovery immediately made Ivy suspicious, so she started researching Conrad online. What she found made her blood run cold. Several lawsuits accused Conrad's company of fraudulent land deals. Former business partners claimed he moved assets illegally between accounts. One article even mentioned properties being transferred under false ownership records. The deeper Ivy looked, the worse everything became. Then she found payment records connected to Maddox. Large payments, unexplained payments, all linked directly to Conrad's corporation. Suddenly, the entire situation became terrifyingly clear. This was not a simple inheritance fight. Her brothers planned to sell the family home quickly, move money through company accounts, and disappear before anyone could question the missing funds connected to their father's business. But one thing stood in their way. Ivy. Her ownership rights made the sale legally dangerous for them. That was why they pressured her to sign the documents so aggressively. Not because they needed routine inheritance paperwork. They needed protection. If Ivy signed the papers, the fraudulent property sale would appear completely legal. And if investigators later uncovered missing money or forged loans, her signature would connect her to everything too. For the first time, Ivy fully understood the truth. Her brothers were not trying to leave her out. They were trying to use her as a shield. That realization hurt more than anything else. That night, Ivy drove alone to the cemetery after midnight. Rain lightly tapped against the windshield while she sat outside her parents' graves, trying to breathe through the pain in her chest. She thought about every sacrifice she made for the family, every birthday she missed while caring for her mother, every opportunity she gave up, every cruel comment her brothers made while she carried responsibilities they abandoned years ago. And after all that sacrifice, they still chose to destroy her. Tears streamed down her face as years of exhaustion and heartbreak finally poured out all at once. But slowly, another feeling replaced the sadness. Anger. Cold, quiet anger. And sitting alone in that dark cemetery parking lot, Ivy made a decision that changed everything. For the first time in her life, she stopped protecting her brothers. Ivy understood something very clearly now. Accusing her brothers without proof would change nothing. Men like Grayson, Maddox, and Ethan would deny everything unless she had evidence strong enough to destroy every lie they told. So Ivy started secretly recording conversations around the house. At first, the recordings captured small details. Arguments about missing money. Discussions about changing dates on paperwork. Panic over probate deadlines. Every conversation confirmed the same thing. Her brothers were hiding something much bigger than inheritance problems. Still, Ivy kept pretending she trusted them. She smiled at dinner. She acted confused during legal conversations. And slowly, her brothers became careless. Then one night, everything changed. Ivy was walking past Grayson's office when she heard shouting inside. Maddox sounded furious. "You said Dad would never live long enough for auditors to check the accounts." The room instantly fell silent. Even Ethan sounded shocked after hearing those words. Outside the door, Ivy froze completely. Her heart started pounding so hard she thought they might hear it through the wall. That single sentence confirmed her worst fear. Their father's illness had not only been exploited after his death. Her brothers were planning around it while he was still alive. Ivy quietly backed away from the office before anyone noticed her listening. Once she reached her bedroom, she locked the door and sat shaking on the floor. She felt sick. This was no longer greed. This was betrayal at the darkest level possible. Over the next week, the recordings became even worse. Grayson discussed falsifying ownership disclosures connected to the house sale. Maddox admitted moving company money into personal accounts. Ethan worried investigators could connect forged signatures to mortgage documents. Every recording added another piece to the nightmare. These were not reckless mistakes made during grief. Everything had been planned carefully. Meanwhile, Ivy continued pretending to trust them completely. She even agreed to attend the final buyer meeting at a downtown legal office. Her brothers believed they were finally winning. What they did not know was that Ivy had already contacted an estate attorney privately. She provided copies of every document, every recording, and every suspicious financial record she discovered. The attorney reviewed everything carefully before giving Ivy an answer that terrified her. This was no longer simple inheritance fraud. Federal financial investigators might already be watching the Holloway Company. And if the brothers completed the property sale before authorities intervened, the entire situation could explode publicly. Not only would the business collapse, the Holloway family name itself could be destroyed forever. For the first time, Ivy realized the truth had become bigger than revenge. Now it was about survival. The night before the property sale, Ivy's brothers decided to celebrate inside the family home. To them, the dinner felt like victory. To Ivy, it felt like mourning the final piece of her childhood. The dining table was covered with expensive food and drinks that none of them could really afford anymore. Ethan raised his glass proudly and toasted to new beginnings. Maddox talked excitedly about investment opportunities he planned to make once the sale money arrived. Grayson sat quietly at the end of the table, looking calmer than he had in weeks. He truly believed he manipulated everything successfully. Meanwhile, Ivy forced herself to smile while listening to them celebrate the destruction of their own family. Every laugh sounded fake. Every conversation felt poisonous. Then, during dessert, Grayson looked directly at Ivy and casually said something that cut deeper than any insult before it. "You know, Dad always worried you'd never survive on your own." The room became quiet for a second. Ethan awkwardly looked down at his plate. Maddox pretended not to react. But Grayson only continued eating calmly, like he said nothing wrong. The words hit Ivy like a knife in her chest. For years, she secretly believed she disappointed her father. While her brothers built careers and earned praise, she stayed home changing medications, cleaning hospital equipment, and sacrificing her own future for the family. Part of her always wondered if her father saw her as weak too. But after discovering the hidden deed, Ivy finally understood the truth. Her father did not leave her ownership of the house because he pitied her. He did it because he knew exactly who his sons really were. And before he died, he tried to protect the only child he still trusted completely. That realization changed something deep inside her. For the first time in years, Ivy stopped seeing herself as the forgotten daughter. Her silence was never weakness. Her sacrifices were never failure. Her brothers misunderstood her because they never understood loyalty, responsibility, or love the way she did. That night, after everyone finally went upstairs to sleep, Ivy quietly walked through the dark house alone. She passed the hallway where she once learned to ride roller skates as a little girl. She stood in the kitchen where her mother used to sing softly while cooking dinner. Then she entered her father's office, the room where he secretly corrected his greatest mistake before he died. Finally, Ivy stood alone in the dark living room staring at the family photos hanging on the walls. And there, surrounded by memories her brothers nearly destroyed, she made herself one final promise. Tomorrow, the truth would finally destroy them instead. The next morning, Ivy's brothers arrived at the downtown legal office looking confident and relaxed. For the first time in weeks, they truly believed everything was finally under control. Conrad Voss greeted them warmly near the conference room entrance. He shook Grayson's hand like they were celebrating a successful business deal instead of destroying a family. Stacks of closing documents covered the large conference table. Everything looked clean, professional, normal, too normal. Ivy arrived last, quiet, nervous, exactly how her brothers expected her to look. Grayson even smiled slightly when she entered the room, clearly convinced she remained too weak and emotional to understand what was really happening. The meeting started smoothly. Lawyers reviewed property disclosures, ownership transfers, and sale agreements while Conrad impatiently checked his watch every few minutes. Maddox confidently discussed financial matters. Ethan avoided eye contact completely, and Ivy sat silently at the far end of the table listening carefully. Then suddenly, one attorney paused while reviewing a document. He stared at the page longer than the others. The room slowly became quiet. Finally, the attorney looked up and asked one simple question. "Can someone explain why Ms. Holloway's survivorship ownership was omitted from previous disclosures?" Everything changed instantly. Grayson's confidence disappeared. Maddox stopped talking completely. Ethan looked visibly panicked, and Conrad's face darkened with anger. Nobody answered. For several painful seconds, the entire room sat frozen in silence. Then the conference room door opened again. Two additional people walked inside wearing dark suits and carrying folders. Federal financial investigators. One of them calmly introduced himself before placing several thick files onto the conference table. Inside were copies of forged loan documents, altered signatures, suspicious bank transfers, and financial records connected directly to the Holloway Construction Company. Ivy watched the color drain from her brothers' faces. For months, they believed they controlled the story. What they never realized was that investigators had already been tracking financial irregularities connected to the company long before the property sale. And by attempting to complete the house transaction, they accidentally handed investigators the final evidence needed against them. The room exploded into chaos almost immediately. Grayson blamed Maddox for mishandling the accounts. Maddox accused Ethan of leaking information. Ethan started panicking and denying everything. Meanwhile, Conrad Voss threatened lawsuits and shouted at everyone for ruining the deal. The lawyers looked stunned. Investigators calmly continued collecting documents while the entire Holloway family collapsed in front of them. And through all of it, Ivy remained completely silent at the end of the table, watching, listening, finally understanding everything. For the first time in years, nobody interrupted her, nobody dismissed her, and nobody could silence the truth anymore. After the failed property closing, everything inside the Holloway family collapsed faster than Ivy imagined. Investigators immediately froze several business accounts connected to the Holloway Construction Company. Lawyers started reviewing financial records, loan documents, and ownership transfers connected to the case. Conrad Voss reacted first. The moment investigators became involved, he denied all responsibility and pushed blame toward Ivy's brothers. Publicly, he claimed he knew nothing about forged signatures or suspicious money transfers. The media never learned every detail, but rumors spread quickly through legal and business circles. People whispered about fraudulent estate transfers, missing company funds, and fake financial records tied to the Holloway name. Under pressure, the brothers started destroying each other. Maddox insisted Grayson controlled all legal paperwork and business decisions. Grayson accused Ethan of handling hidden transfers between accounts. Then Ethan emotionally broke down during questioning and admitted he only participated because his older brothers convinced him nobody would ever question the inheritance process. Watching them fall apart felt surreal to Ivy. These were the same men who once controlled every conversation at the family table. The same brothers who made her feel weak, invisible, and powerless for years. Now they could barely survive one interview without blaming each other. Part of Ivy felt satisfied seeing the truth finally catch up to them. But another part of her felt heartbroken, because despite everything they did, they were still her brothers. Late at night, memories kept returning unexpectedly. Childhood movie nights in the living room. Family vacations during summer. Her father teaching all 4 children how to fish near the lake when they were young. The grief became confusing. Part of Ivy hated them for their betrayal. Another part mourned the family they destroyed with their own greed. Meanwhile, legal proceedings officially confirmed something important. The house legally belonged entirely to Ivy through survivorship ownership rights. Her brothers never had authority to sell the property in the first place. Their entire plan depended on manipulating Ivy into signing away her rights voluntarily. And the moment she quietly refused, their entire scheme slowly started collapsing from the inside. That realization gave Ivy a strange sense of peace. For the first time in years, she no longer doubted herself. Her father trusted her. The law protected her. And the truth finally stood beside her too. Still, one painful piece of the story remained unfinished. A few days later, Grayson contacted her privately asking to meet alone at the family home. Her attorneys strongly advised against it. But after thinking about everything that happened, Ivy made her decision quietly. She agreed to see him one final time. Because deep down, she knew there were still truths Grayson had never admitted out loud. Weeks later, Grayson met Ivy alone inside the empty family home. For the first time in her life, he looked small. There was no confidence left in him anymore. No expensive suit. No sharp business voice. No manipulative speeches. Only exhaustion. The house felt strangely quiet around them. Most of the furniture was covered in white sheets because investigators had already taken many company files and financial records away. Grayson stood near the living room window staring outside for several seconds before finally speaking. At first, he tried defending himself. He blamed financial pressure, business losses, debt, fear. According to him, everything started after their father became sick and the construction company slowly began failing financially. Clients stopped paying on time. Projects collapsed. Loans became impossible to manage. Instead of admitting the truth publicly, Grayson secretly borrowed money using forged approvals connected to their father's authority. Maddox helped move money between business accounts to hide the growing losses. At first, we thought we could fix it, Grayson admitted quietly. They believed the company would recover before anyone noticed the missing money. But things only became worse. The debts grew larger every month until hiding them became impossible. That was when selling the family house became their desperate escape plan. Ivy listened silently while years of lies slowly collapsed between them. Then Grayson finally admitted the truth that hurt more than everything else. Their father discovered financial inconsistencies before he died. He realized someone inside the family company was forging records. That was why he secretly changed the deed ownership before his death. Because he no longer trusted his sons. The room became painfully quiet. Then Grayson looked directly at Ivy with tired eyes and whispered something she never expected to hear. He trusted you, even after everything. Ivy immediately felt tears burning behind her eyes. For years, she believed her father overlooked her completely. But now she understood the truth. He saw her sacrifices. He saw her loyalty. He saw the years she spent caring for their mother while everyone else moved on with their lives. Even if he failed to say it clearly while alive, he knew her worth. Neither of them spoke for several moments after that. The silence inside the house felt heavy with grief, regret, and memories neither of them could escape anymore. Finally, Grayson slowly walked toward the front door. Before leaving, he stopped and asked one last question without turning around. Do you hate us? Ivy looked around the house filled with memories their greed nearly destroyed forever. Then she answered honestly. No. I think losing yourselves was worse. Grayson lowered his head quietly after hearing those words. And somehow, that truth hurt him far more than anger ever could. Almost a year later, Ivy still lived inside the Holloway family home. But now, everything felt different. Quiet. Peaceful. For the first time in many years, the house no longer felt heavy with stress, arguments, or secrets hiding behind closed doors. The investigations eventually ended with financial settlements, fraud charges, and the complete destruction of the construction business her father spent decades building. The Holloway company no longer existed. Her brothers scattered into separate lives after everything collapsed. Maddox moved away quietly. Ethan stopped speaking to almost everyone. Grayson disappeared from public business circles completely. None of them stayed close anymore. The family never truly recovered from what happened. But slowly, Ivy began rebuilding herself. Room by room, she repaired parts of the house that had been neglected during her mother's long illness. She painted old walls, fixed broken shelves, and cleaned years of dust from forgotten corners. Outside, she planted flowers beside the front porch again, just like her mother used to do every spring. And little by little, the house finally started feeling like home again. Not just legally, emotionally. One rainy evening, while cleaning her father's office during renovations, Ivy discovered something hidden deep inside the bottom drawer of his old desk. An envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from her father. The letter was short, simple, and heartbreaking. He admitted he regretted allowing Ivy to carry so much responsibility alone while publicly praising his sons for appearances. He wrote that he noticed her strength too late and wished he had protected her better while he was still alive. Then came the sentence that shattered her completely. Changing the deed was his final attempt to make things right before he died. Ivy sat quietly in the old office holding the letter with trembling hands while tears streamed down her face. She cried harder than she had during the investigation itself, because revenge never truly healed the betrayal inside her. Winning the house did not erase years of loneliness. Exposing her brothers did not repair the family they destroyed. But finally knowing her father saw her sacrifice, finally knowing she mattered to him, healed something deeper. That night, rain softly tapped against the windows while Ivy walked downstairs holding the letter close to her chest. She locked the front door, turned off the downstairs lights, and stood quietly inside the home her brothers once believed they could steal from her. The house felt calm now, safe. And for the first time since childhood, Ivy finally felt safe too. In the end, her brothers lost far more than money or property. They lost the only person who truly held the family together all those years. And by the time they realized it, it was already too late.